Hello, Jonathan. How are you today?
I'm good. Um, how easy is it to get a uh GSD?
It's pretty easy. There's just a website.
What?
There's a website you can request one at, and then
Mhm.
there's you can just submit a PR if you
Is there
want.
an API for it?
The API is just Git right now. The request the way it's structured right now is there's a website that's I think it's linked to from gsd.id maybe. No, I don't. Yeah, getting started. I don't know. Quick links. But you can just submit a pull request requesting a shitload of them if you need a lot.
Right. The reason that I'm thinking about this is like, so automated bulk pull request generation. A lot of the times we generate pull requests and sometimes we fix security vulnerability, sometimes we don't, right? Sometimes they're security hardening, sometimes they're not.
Yep.
Um, I figure it's better to throw some identifier on it rather than no identifier on it. Even like, is it okay to think about GSD as like CVE light?
Mhm.
Okay.
The kernel
So,
exists today. So the Linux kernel has like a ML. They run over all their commit messages, and anything that they think is maybe almost a security thing, they send me a request. I submit like these bulk GSD, I don't know what to call them, requests. That sounds wrong. But then OSV takes those internally, and Google does magic with them inside their walls. And it's most of them like wouldn't classify as security vulnerabilities.
okay.
Yeah.
So this is a valid use case. If I'm doing bulk automated pull request
Yep.
generation, we want to have an ID for it.
Yep.
We can,
100%.
okay. All right. Let's chat more about that as
Yeah.
um yeah. I'm building out a bunch of I'm standing up the a Python client that's written to automate calling Modern's API and go through the process of automatically generating the pull requests. And so if we can automate more and more of this, the goal of this client is that it'll be a long, like basically it automatically runs on weekdays basically and automatically generates pull requests. So if there's any new code that flags a vulnerability, the pull request gets generated. So since this is going to be continuously running into all time, um, being able to automate also the GSD assignment would be pretty, a good idea too.
Yeah, totally, man. That's exactly one of the use cases we have in mind. Hello, everyone. Hello, Ryan.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going, man. I hate this week so much. Like daylight savings just like messes with me for a week.
Dude, tell me about it.
I hate it. I hate it so much.
Well,
And
we're
then
in the
poor
time
Dan, your
vortex
calendar is
too.
probably a train wreck because of all the US meetings that have shifted an hour.
Well, yeah, because we're in this stupid time vortex where for 2 weeks Europe is hasn't switched and the US has switched,
Yep.
and everybody in Asia is like just kind of scratching their head like, what are you, can you please get on the same page as us and not do this anymore?
I know, man.
So yeah.
I know. I feel you. I hate it so much.
Well, that all said, it's great for me to actually be back and coming to OSF meetings again.
Awesome.
After my 1 year sabbatical working for Western Digital.
Nice. We got a few minutes still. I have to find my notes.
Hello, everyone.
Mr. Wheeler.
Yes, I will paste the doc, Dan. Here is the SBOM everywhere agenda. Did I get the date right? I did. So what I do a lot is because I usually put the agendas together the day before, I'll often put yesterday's date for today because I'm not smart like that. All right, let's get cracking. I think it'll be light today. I don't think we have a lot on the agenda. And I know there's a bunch of people at stuff this week. All right, so as we know, to make this as confusing as possible, we sign in the tools agenda meeting, and then we talk about SBOM everywhere. There's a topic, it says other new topics, and someone put governing board wants to see Sterling tool chains, SBOM everywhere. Did you add that, David?
Yeah, I did. This is just a quick heads up. Josh, I know you already know this, but last year the governing board wanted to see more on Sterling tool chains. I'm expecting
Well,
SBOM ever will be part of that.
Hold on. Can we, like, I think we have time to explain this correctly. Can you like explain what a Sterling tool chain means and I like it, I guarantee
question.
a lot of people don't know.
Well, and to be honest, we're still working that question out ourselves. But I think that the short answer really, I think I'm going to go backwards a little bit. The OpenSSF governing board kind of oversees the OpenSSF as a whole, and they would like to see a whole lot more automation applied to, increase security both in originally developed and the whole build distribution process. And so the phrase that's been used, which probably is a little misleading but is okay, is Sterling tool chain. Basically, some recommended tools, some recommended use of tools together, so that people have hey, if you do this, lots of good things will automatically happen. It's often said in the singular, but I think the reality is there's going to be a Sterling tool chain for each ecosystem. But be that as it may, and it's not like, oh my, we're going to take away your birthday if you do something else. It's just you know what? We know life is hard. There are lots of choices. Here is a set of choices that make sense and works together. So, and if you want to know, hey, what's that list and exactly, and so, well, that's kind of in process right now. So I am trying to figure out what they want and what actually is practical, and pulling in some other folks, and we'll see what we can come up with, and hopefully it will make sense.
And generating SBOMs is expected to be part of this process.
That's right. That's right. The expectation is, hey, the result will be not just, software that works and a distribution system that's protected, but one of the things a lot of governments want is, I want to see by a lot of large organizations is, I want to see what's in there. And I think a lot of developers of open source are saying that's great, but I have very, very limited time. Well, I totally, that's exactly right. That's a serious issue. So the solution is not to have everybody rewrite the universe. The solution is, let's get some automated tools in there so that they don't have to do that.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yep. I'm excited.
Okay,
we'll see.
That's all. I just want to give people a heads up instead of being surprised.
And I can't wait. I'm sure open source being legendary for agreeing with everyone else, I see no issues here. So it'll be interesting. I'm willing to say that. But I think SBOMs are one of the few things I don't think we're going to get a lot of disagreement with, we'll say, just because I think everyone is starting to recognize like SBOMs are a thing that is just happening. So that's exciting. I actually listened to a
SBOM all the
podcast the other
things.
day. What's that?
SBOM all the things.
Yeah, right, exactly. I actually listened to a podcast the other day and someone mentioned, and I hadn't thought of it this way, but SBOM is one of the few instances where regulation is leading industry, because we're seeing all these regulations saying you need SBOMs, whereas I mean, the tooling just isn't there yet, obviously, but we're working on it. So that's pretty cool. I like it. All right. Okay. So for anyone who didn't see him, a lot of you did. Can you paste an intro? The first item on the agenda is to paste an intro so we don't just spend half the meeting going over intros. And then if there's no other tools topics, let's go to the SBOM topic, which I just pasted the link to. Okay, David, what are you adding? I don't know. Anyway. All right, I'm going to start talking first, and then people can add agenda items if they wish. Town hall. There is an OpenSSF town hall on the 16th, and SBOM everywhere is one of the topics. So I get like 5 minutes to explain what we're doing. And basically what we're doing is going to look a lot like this agenda right here in front of us right now. So nothing will be surprising to any of you, but hopefully we'll grab some new interested folks and just explain what we're doing to the wider audience, because as these things typically go in a group like the OpenSSF, the right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing. So little blurbs in the town halls, I think, help. Any questions or comments? I'll assume not. Dan, and is Sarah here? I don't see Sarah. No, I don't think so. Dan, I'll let you take the next item, the mobilization plan.
There's not honestly
Okay,
a lot
share my screen.
that I can. Oh, am I muted? No, I'm not.
No, you're not muted. Sorry, I just realized I should share my screen that way.
Yeah, the if you scroll down, Sarah and I did some additional work on this last week. We went through all the comments that that you and some others had put in. We tried to flesh it out and create some additional text, write some text, if you will, and we ended up, I think, in a pretty good place in terms of. I think what we have is basically ready to be checked into to GitHub. So the idea is, and I took the action last week to take what we have here and turn it into Markdown and put it in GitHub, and I have not done that yet. So, okay. But at that point, then I think what we want to do is drive it through PRs and that kind of thing. And I think there are still some questions in here, probably. Yeah, but at this point, I would suggest don't leave comments on the doc. Let's drive it. Let me move it over into GitHub, and then let's talk about it there. Okay.
I love that. I think that's perfect. Yeah, put it in GitHub. Like, I don't know who owns this. Whoever owns it, lock it, right? Don't let anyone else do anything to it. And I'd say,
okay, yeah. Good.
Do you own it? I think you own it. But yeah, you do. Okay, yes, it says you own it. Yeah, I'd say, Dan, lock it. Just put a note at the top that's like, we're putting this in GitHub, and do it. Just throw it in there as Markdown, and that's that. And then I'd say let's give one more meeting cycle to let people add any comments, and after that, we'll kick it over to the TAC and the governing board for some head nods, and I think we're good.
Yeah.
Awesome. Cool. So here's your chance, everyone. Like, complain now or that's the end. Well, that's not true, because we can always change and edit it once it's in GitHub.
Yeah.
Cool.
And some of this as well talks a little bit about the form that we would expect to at the bottom, the form that we would expect things like user needs to take, right? So talking about SBOM education, educating people as to what the user needs are, and this kind of stuff like developer. As a developer, I need to blank so that I can blank, and SBOMs help me in this way, that kind of thing. You know, they're just being very clear what it is that we mean by that, basically.
Yep.
So yeah, anyway, I will push this over into GitHub, and then we can start talking about it there.
Awesome. Yeah, that'll be great. Oh, that's exciting. I actually haven't looked at GitHub in a while, so don't feel bad about where you put it. We probably need to clean that repo up a little bit. So
Yeah, I think I took
Anyways,
an
fine.
action too. Did you, do I have access? Well, okay, whatever, I'll make a PR. And then,
I don't even know. I think I have the ability to fix this. Whatever, hit me up on Slack. No one needs to watch me stumble my way
Okay.
through GitHub on a screen
Oh,
share.
come on.
So you know what I love? I talk about this with some people I work with, is like, it feels like you're competent until you share your screen, and then it's like you forget how to use the mouse and you look like an idiot no matter what you try to do. It's so good. Anyway, yeah, bug me on Slack, Dan, and I'll make sure you get the whatever privileges if you don't have them, and then yeah,
Okay.
just toss it in. That's exciting. It's very exciting. Cool. All right. So I will go next. The next one is the tooling landscape proposal. What this document is meant to be is we want to go to the governing board and ask them for some money. Because one of the challenges we have in the SBOM universe is there's like 7,000 things going on and no one knows what they are. And so we want to build a landscape similar to the, was it the CNCF, I think, created it. And it's just a nice kind of visual representation of everything we can find about SBOMs. And we have no idea how much it's going to cost. This is one of our challenges, is like we're going to have to solicit bids from contractors to figure this one out. So I don't know how that's going to go, but Kate and I spent some time on this. We put it all together. I feel like it's in good shape. If anyone has any comments, add them. There's a couple things I'd like to get added that I'm struggling to find. Like the NTIA has a bunch of documents. There's a bunch of lists that exist today. I need to just dig some of those up. I haven't looked very hard, but otherwise I think we're in fine shape. I don't have a whole lot else to say. I guess, what time is it? We got some time. I'll run through it quick just so everyone gets an idea of what we're doing. We broke it down into a handful, and also if anyone has any questions, just jump in. We broke it down into a handful of tasks, like stand up a landscape is obvious. To do that, we have to take the CNCF landscape and turn it into something we can use with our branding. And the intent is to not use the existing OpenSSF landscape. There is one, but that's for kind of different purposes. We want an SBOM only landscape. That way we can list whatever we want on it, and I don't envision too many problems. So stand up a tooling landscape. This one I don't think will take very long, because I found out the CNCF released an unbranded landscape. So then obviously we want to apply all of the known things to it. This is where we need the list of existing tools, the list of existing NTIA documents, the list of existing working groups, like all that kind of stuff we can find. And this one is kind of the question. We don't know how long this is going to take because there's just a lot of stuff. And so a couple hours. Just jump in, George. You need to raise your hand.
Yeah, just like I looked into this sometime briefly last year, together with Kate, so she should also probably know. It seemed to me, and I'm not a node developer, but you have the front end and you have a back end application. So does stand up SBOM tooling landscape, is that really just about deploying it or also changing the back end? Because I think some back end changes might be needed. So it might just be how you like present this, or how you phrase it in the proposal, because it's TBD anyway. But I think if needed, factor in some need for a little bit of code development.
Yeah,
to
each of these are described in detail kind of down below. And for the tooling landscape, there's the unbranded version. And then what do we say? Expected SBOM landscape will repurpose this existing work, blah, blah, blah. And yeah, we don't know exactly what it will be, but under goals and expectations, work is based off to find the infrastructure needed, and then repos, branding, the ensure landscape code is modernized, because Lord knows half those dependencies probably haven't been touched in years that they have. If it's like every other node project on the planet. So yeah, we kind of lay some of that out. And I guess that is where
Okay.
we'll have the contractors will have to figure that what that means. I don't have a good feel for it.
Okay, that's fine, but that's part of the process to say they need to anyway take a look at that and then
Yeah.
part of the okay. No, that's fine.
100%.
And okay.
100%. Okay, so anyway, find the existing lists, then enrich the list. This one I'm less sure about, because what does enriching like I don't know. We talk about it a little bit down below. Enrich the NTIA list. So all the NTIA content is out of date for anyone who's looked, right? It's like 2 or 3 years old now. I mean, it's not new. And so how much effort do we want to put into kind of taking what the NTIA has already done and starting to fix it? And I don't know. I don't know how to even address this one. I think Kate might have some better ideas than I do here, but this is like the best we could write down. So we'll see. We'll see, I guess. And again, part of the goal, and then the most important part is landscape is community maintainable, because our suspicion is that once we have a landscape that anyone can submit pull requests to, the projects are going to, because they're going to want to make sure their project is listed. They're going to want to make sure their working group is listed, all that kind of stuff. And so we expect the community to help a lot with this. Even if they don't, a landscape isn't that hard to maintain. So this group could probably do some of the heavy lifting if we need to, but fundamentally, that is our expectation. And that's the intent at the end of this, is to have an output the community can help us take care of and curate. Similar to like the CNCF has a lot of community contributions to theirs because everyone wants to be on the list. So that's that. Questions, comments, concerns? All right, cool. It's pretty straightforward. Again, but I will say I don't want to send this to the governing board of the TAC until Dan's thing is ready, because I think we could probably send them together, because this one also has some, we'll say, light requests for funding and resources, so we can probably bundle them up. All right. What else do we have here? What about?
But Josh,
Yes.
excuse me, Josh. Do you really intend to go to the governing board without a number? I understand the challenge of coming up with a number associated with this ask,
So I see it as a multi-step process, Arno. I think we would like to have the governing board basically say this is a fine idea, and then we will solicit proposals, like talk to some contractors. Hopefully they can help us with some numbers and hours, and then show up to, no, I don't expect the governing board to approve a proposal that has TBD in every slot.
yeah, that's the thing. Is like,
Blank
it
check,
seems like they're going to
please.
say, okay, come
Right,
back
of
when you have
course.
a number.
But I think
I understand.
the intent initially is more of this seems like a fine idea, or absolutely not. There's no way we'll ever pay for this, right?
Okay.
And though based on those two paths, we can then use that to, because the other thing, I can't go to contractors today and be like, hey, I have this proposal that's completely unapproved and never been seen by the governing board. Do you want to spend a couple hours helping me fill it out? They're going to be like, no, I don't, right? So
No, I
that's
understand.
part of
That's
it. Like,
fine.
and honestly, if anyone has any clue of how long some of this stuff might take, that would be lovely. So, and again, Kate's done this before many times, so I'm going to lean heavily on her expertise and understanding. David, evaluation of SBOM generators. I shamefully have not looked at this since the last meeting.
Well, okay, so I will just begin your shaming now.
I deserve it. That's fine.
Oh, well, okay. So anyway, yeah, I haven't had as much time the last 2 weeks as I was originally hoping. But that said, progress made. So basically, I think there's been at least an agreement among some of us that it's important to actually figure out the current status of open source software SBOM generation tools. So the only, the obvious way to do that is by, well, let's start writing the document we'd like to see and then start doing the analysis. So, we've at least put some context together, identified some related work, identified a set of SBOM generators. My thanks to the many folks who have over time turned this from a list of, well, I mean, we didn't start with a completely blank slate, but we've definitely extended. Um, uh, I totally get the comment about, hey, some organization would be helpful, agreed. But I think the first step is let's identify and then figure out how to analyze them and then, go do that. We have identified some related tools also and, and that sort of thing. But the idea is what are the tools and how can we evaluate them? And there's a lot to do. There's a lot of TBDs and triple question marks. But at least, progress is being made, not as quickly as I'd like. But the idea is to try to whip up of an approach and then try to go execute and evaluate and get some answers. Thoughts, comments?
I'm muted. There we go.
Oh, don't worry. That everybody's been saying that since the pandemic began.
Yeah, it happened. So my thought here is, how deep do you want this to go? And kind of the reason I ask is if you look at like Cyclone DX or SPDX tooling pages, they list
Yep.
like hundreds and hundreds of things. And I bet more than half are probably end of life or not maintained in a meaningful way. And
Right.
even of the half that are maintained, some of them are very niche, some of them are very targeted. You know what I mean? Like how
Well, and a lot of them actually aren't out of scope. There's a huge number of tools that are for things that have nothing to do with SBOM generation. And so, yes, you're right. There's a huge number of tooling, but a lot of it is for like analysis of SBOMs, for example, or, other things that are, as soon as you say, hey, I want to know about tools for SBOM generation, the list gets much shorter quickly. I mean, you can see the list here. And, right now I would say, I mean, there's obviously how do I count multiple tools, but essentially 12, and that's including SwiftBomb, which CertCC has essentially abandoned. And you'll notice that for them, I put them in the honorable mention category with no intention of evaluating, because unless there's some real reason to go back and look at dead tools, I don't think there's a reason to evaluate dead tools. So must be live, must generate open SBOMs, I think has to be the minimum criteria. And you know what, that list, we still need to go through and see if there's any key tools, but I don't expect it to be much longer than this list right here. And to be fair, one of the items in that list is just listing the generic SPDX page, which I think we've already extracted most of the key tools from, but we need to go back and do a double check. So I'm not expecting a million tools, actually.
Okay, I mean, that's good, because that's like the thing that scares me. Matt, what's up?
Well, if it
I'll say yes, you should be scared. So, yeah. So to jam on what David said, though, I mean, if you search for SBOM generation, you'll see a lot of the public open tools, the simple tools, but most major security scanning providers, you'll find maybe their open source footprint if they have a project, a top level project. But most providers that IBM deals with, and they're half a dozen or more, they all are either working on or creating SBOM generators that you'll never find in your general searches, because they're on some link on some homepage that they have on their product page. So, but they oftentimes they're open source, but they're tightly coupled to their backend databases and their scanning services.
Yeah, well, okay. So let's talk about this. I guess I've been assuming that this is for evaluating of, I'm only going to use an open source tool for generating my SBOM. I'm happy, my recipients may use proprietary tools for other things, but if we want widespread adoption, we need to make this at least some basic level super easy. And so my theory has been, we're not opposed, I'm not opposed to a proprietary vendor creating a tool to generate SBOMs. Carry forth.
Well, I'm just saying that the previous tool listings done back in 2016 or whatever, they had classifications saying this is all purely open source, this is hybrid. So, that type of approach is probably warranted.
Yeah, I guess for the moment, and I guess this is for the trying to make things simple, I was trying to do for more of the pure set to start with. And I want to be careful here, because it's not that I'm saying, oh, you're evil if you do a closed source product. That is not the message I'm trying to send. It's very much I'm trying to make this so broad, SBOM generation so broad.
Typically what you see is that there's an open source footprint. You get some amount for free, basic generation. But if you want SALSA level 3 source information, you got to connect to the backend database to get the identities, the code genomes, all those things, right? Provenance and pedigree.
Okay, so it does work without the closed source tool.
That's not a universal statement. That's generally the way these are designed, right? Give us a try, start an open source, we'll get some amount for free, and we'll get whatever's public. But you won't. But if you want to tap into our rich pedigree and provenance databases and verify checksums and hashes, you got to pay for the extra attached service to get that extra SALSA 3 information in your SBOM.
Got it. Perhaps that's just my misreading, because the things that when I looked, it looked like they were essentially required. But maybe that was a misunderstanding of their circumstance.
I have a thought on this, but am I muted? I'm not muted. Okay. Let's move on. Saba has his hand up, and then I'll come back to my thought.
Okay, just a question. Do you looking for any help for the evaluation part?
Yes.
And if yes, where? I already dropped you a message on Slack, but still waiting for the answer. That's why I'm asking that.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I get a little overwhelmed on the Slack world. So, but yes, we would love for help. We're basically, the first step was trying to identify where the tools to evaluate, and at least some approaches on how to evaluate, because evaluation can be in, there's always more you can do. So we were trying to come up with what can we do, reasonably speaking, for evaluation. But yes, absolutely, help for that.
Okay, I'm here for this meeting for the last couple of months, but finally we are getting to a point where I can get my hands dirty, so I can do something useful probably.
Excellent.
And also seems that internally this topic is also important for us, so maybe one of my colleagues can also participate in the evaluation. Of course, not full time, but just part time.
You know what I would suggest, and which is, maybe what would be great would be pick one, do a little bit, report back what you have found in, say, in this document, and use that as hey, is this a good template to follow? What have we learned? Because I find that the process of actually trying to do something, you often learn how you really need to do it.
Yeah.
But we want to be fair and to all tools, and not not be preferential to one or the other, but a little bit.
Yeah, it's good. To be honest, we mostly prefer to use Swift for SBOM generation, and I know that what are the issues with Swift, and also getting some reports from customers who are using Privy, for example. So I listed these kind of problematic items in the evaluation criteria. Check with the other tools also. But yeah, if I would like to start with one single tool, then it will be Swift.
Awesome. I approve of that, by the way. But I work for Anchor. Anyone who doesn't know, we are the company driving SIFT development. SIFT is open source though, so we welcome all contributions. Okay, Rob, your hand is up. What's up?
Yeah, I just thought I'd interject here a little bit about the Sneak SBOM generation capabilities. So the Sneak CLI, it is open source, but we're currently trying to improve let's say, our engagement with the open source community to be more clear about what sort of contributions we accept from folks outside of Sneak. Today, we support SBOM generation in the CLI for both CycloneDX and SPDX. It's an experimental feature. We are developing that towards GA release in next quarter. But this is something that we do offer today, and it's open source.
Yeah, can you slip the URL in there, or is that already in there?
Yep, I can share that.
Okay, I want to put that in the document here. So yeah, and so Matt's point's a good one. I would say, we should always, we should strive to be as fair as possible. So if it's an open source software tool and it can work standalone with, then I absolutely should be part of this. And we want to partner with Sneak and everybody else. The goal is not to put anybody out of business, by the way. The goal is just simply, hey, I'm looking for a tool. I have very limited resources. What can be done? And if you find that you want something that's not available as open source, that's a different discussion. But I think the notion was trying to help people find the open source ones. Frankly, I think the closed source folks would like to know what the open source ones can do too.
And I have one last comment to kind of tie up what Matt was talking about, David, is I think something to keep in mind as well is we want to build that landscape, and we can put everything in the landscape. So anything that doesn't maybe make, I don't want to say make a cut, but like anything
They
that
should
we
be in
find
there.
isn't appropriate for this list is more than welcome to be added to the landscape later. And so I think
Right.
that's something to keep in mind, is it's not like we're excluding anything. It's just you're trying to build an actionable, useful list here, right?
Right, but also in terms of evaluations, I'm trying to scope this down. To be honest, there's only so much time everybody has. So by scoping it to only the open source, I think that makes it a little easier. Also, and I don't know if this is true for Sneak, but I do know this is true for some other kinds of tools. There's often criteria that makes it basically illegal, but not illegal. You are contractually obligated not to say anything unless the vendor says it's okay, and the vendor rarely says it's okay. And I'd just rather avoid that morass of those clauses.
Yeah.
I'm not a fan of those clauses. Talk to me later, or check out my posting from years back.
Indeed. Cool. And I think one other point, David, like if you make a list of 150 tools, no one's going to read it, right?
Right.
But
Okay.
how are you going to select the few?
Well, David's problem.
Yeah. Well.
I mean
Well,
that's
it's
I
the
agree
group's
with your
problem.
statement, Josh, but it's I don't know who's going to be the judge and decide. Oh, we list those, not those.
Dr. David A. Wheeler is, and then we get to blame him when someone doesn't like it. It's a perfect.
Well,
yeah, that works.
Yeah, and that voice. Yeah, well, as far as I'm not expecting to see more than 15. Okay, maybe I'm wrong. I mean, 16 will not kill the world. If we see 100, that's a completely different kind of problem. But I mean, I'm hoping that most people have decided, I don't want to write another one. I want to improve an existing one or use an existing one. I think how do I put this kindly? Human laziness discourages making 100 different tools of the same type. And someone's going to counteract, disprove that claim entirely.
No, I think it's a good point. If we find that there are 100 different actively developed SBOM generation tools, like it's a good sign. Maybe we should consolidate those open source efforts and maybe try to have smaller number of tools, but more feature rich, maybe more languages supported and so on. So I think that would be actually quite interesting learning from this effort that maybe the community is too dispersed across too many different projects.
And if I can
Yeah.
quickly respond to that, my expectation is is that there's going to be some that are just obviously the ones to look at first. They support more languages, more in depth. They're far more active. That's not to say that nobody can come up with something new or better. It's just typically they're usually leads, and other people want to work with the leads. They don't want to spend their time working on something that everybody else has abandoned.
Totally, man. All right, cool.
I see Saba said something.
His hand's been up since before. I assume he's on his phone, and that's like a pain to put your hand down. I get it.
Gotcha. Saba, do you have anything else to say?
No, I forgot my hand up. Okay, then I will bug you on Slack and agree where to create this analysis report.
Awesome. Thank you.
This
Okay.
is a case where real in-person meetings make a difference, right? Because if you physically have your hand up, you're definitely going to put it down. On Zoom, it costs nothing to keep your hand up forever.
Yeah, so I have a question specifically on the Sneak CLI tool. Does that work by itself, or is it requiring the back end?
So the answer is today it requires a backend, so it
Okay.
generates the SBOMs on the server side. In the future, there may be we may introduce a totally offline version for SBOM generation, and for some areas like container generation, we may do this on client side, but it's something we're currently looking at and investigating for the future. So, but today it's server side generation.
Gotcha.
Sneak, by the way, so it's open source, and it's also freely available. So developers can generate, SBOMs to their heart's delight, even if it is server side. The product does have, some paid features, of course, but in terms of SBOM generation, I don't think we have any limitations there.
I'm getting more and more confused by your answer. I thought it was one way and the other. I guess I was trying to figure out, does it require a closed source tool to work? I guess was what I was going for.
So
I'm trying to make my life simple.
Yeah. I'm trying to figure out how much to go into the details, but essentially the Sneak CLI in most ecosystems, so most package managers or most programming languages, on the client side, we generate something called a depth graph, which is essentially a proprietary SBOM format. Then we send that depth graph over to the server side, and it gets converted in a service that runs in Sneak's infrastructure. It gets converted to a Cyclone DX or SPDX, and then sent back to the client. That's how it works today.
Okay. Got it. Okay. Actually, that makes sense. And indeed, almost every ecosystem has their own dependency graph format. So that makes sense. Okay. All right.
All right, I'm gonna shovel us along quick. The only other thing left on the agenda, it said documenting SBOM user needs, and Dan, you've got that one. Is there anything?
Nothing. Yes, but nothing additional to report there. Just
gotcha.
It's a work item. We know we need to do it, and I think it happens after the. Let me take care of putting the other thing into GitHub first, and then we can work on that. Basically.
Totally, man. I'm gonna leave it on the agenda just so we don't forget about it. But yeah, I agree 100%. That's all I got. Does anyone have anything else they want to quick add? We got a few more minutes. I'll assume not. Let's escape early then, because I like it when meetings end early. So thank you, everyone. This has been a great conversation, I think. Well done everyone who's put their work together, and anyone is welcome to help. All of these tasks need help. So don't like wait for an invite or think you can't. So awesome. Thank you, everyone. And I guess I will talk to you all soon.
Thank you so very much,
Yeah.
everybody.
That's good.
Thank you. Bye-bye.